Uh, I think, well, I won't summarize what Dr. Paul Schulte have said because he has got a lot of books. I recommend you to actually get them and read them. But more importantly, I think you have a lot of questions and we don't have much time. So I will start with the first question. I have 4 questions. I will start with the first question to Dr. Schulte, is that you have actually recommended a lot of very innovative solutions, right? But a lot of people in the question that are worried about the retraining, and we have a K labor market as well. So people, Laura has talked about it, we need to take care of the bottom. Do you have very specific solution for the bottom part of it, which I think the audience are very concerned about? How do we take care of that to ensure the society is stable? Is there any example?
Yeah, no, it's a great problem, and of course, I think the shocker in the world is how large that the bottom of that K is in the United States, right? Where there's a tremendous problem with undereducated people who, especially now, I do a lot of work in drug and alcohol addiction treatment, as David knows, and I think drug addiction has really skyrocketed. Alcohol addiction is probably skyrocketed during COVID. I think it will lead to violence for governments to ignore and tell the bottom of the K to just pull up your pants and go back to school. I think that will lead to violence, and it's happening in America. Those people need to be taken care of. I loved what Danny said. We save the worker, not the job. And if you have an unequal society, you're going to get violence. No matter what you think, violence will come because there's nothing to lose and they're cut out of the pie and they're desperate. And so to say that pure market-based, competitive-based, Schumpeterian, destruction for the bottom of the K, I think is inappropriate. I think that they need welfare. They need, people are starving. There's people in the world now who can't eat, especially in America. And so, and by the way, when governments give out money, that money just swirls around the economy. That's one of the laws of economics. Not only that, but the government gets the money back in the taxes. And so there's a lot to be said for letting money swirl around, in a Keynesian manner in order to prevent violence and destruction, because that takes 10, 20 years to come back from. When your society falls apart with violence, it'll take a long time to come back. Just look at Hong Kong, where they haven't taken care of the bottom of the K for 15 years. Singapore does a very good job at that. It probably needs to do a lot more.
Yeah, very interesting. I think, what you're seeing is that, most of the policy now is that the money is not going to the right people. So that's what's happening in the world now. We have to really target a segment where the money really got to go to that segment with a very high marginal propensity to consume. But we are running out of time. There's so many questions. I've actually looked through all the questions and summarized into 3. And I'm going to ask that all 3 questions from all of you to the panel so that they can respond as they go about. I'll go around to ask them to respond. The first question that is, what if we have a vaccine? That is the first question, and any panel member could actually answer that question. The second is that the high real estate prices is translated into high renter, and in terms of wages, we are less competitive. So we are in a very tight situation. How do we deal with that? Because as compared to other countries, compared to China, maybe we are 3 times more expensive. Compared to Eastern Europe, maybe we are 10 times more expensive. So how do we deal with that? And the last question, which I summarized from everybody, is about the competitiveness. Again, back to the same question I asked earlier on, that the large companies, which we have been catered to them to come to Singapore and create the jobs, they may be competitive around the world. They may be looking at our land costs, they may be looking at our wages, but more importantly, our own companies who wants to go global now into the virtual economy. Are we competitive enough? So those are the 3 questions that I summarized from the audience. Maybe I can go around now to Prof. Danny Quah, that you can pick any of the questions to answer.
I'm happy to do that. Thank you, David, for summarizing that so well. And thank you, fellow panelists, for such interesting presentations and ideas. The question that David has thrown me is, what if we find this magic bullet vaccine? Doesn't isn't it the case that all these problems go away? And I think Kin Ao and some others in the audience were asking about this. So here's my conjecture, that the problems won't go away. And there are two reasons I say that. First is that COVID-19 is just one member of a family of coronaviruses, and they're constantly mutating, they're constantly evolving and changing. Just as we have not gotten rid of the common flu because it constantly mutates, so too there's the possibility that this particular virus will continue to evolve, and we're like chasing a moving target. That doesn't mean we shouldn't look for a vaccine, but it just means that other considerations remain. We continue to need to be vigilant. And the challenges that COVID-19 today throws out for us is like opening a Pandora's box that tells us these are the issues that you're going to be concerned about. Issues about congestion, issues about taking care of the bottom of the income distribution, issues about how you manage mass transportation systems. All of those will remain. It cannot be business as usual, but there is a way ahead. Vaccine will help, but it will not cure everything. Back to you, David.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of people will agree with you that it's just not a vaccine problem. There are a lot more underlying problems that we need to look at. So anyone, Laura, you have any response to any of the questions?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree with what Professor Danny Quah said, but I'm a bit more optimistic than him. Okay. If you look at the stock market, in particular the US stock market, I checked the recent data. There is a positive correlation, about 0.6, okay, 60% positive correlation between the stock market performance and the news on progress in vaccination. Of course, one can argue the US stock market is probably overvalued at this point. And of course, investors are always optimistic. But still, I think there is an upside option for the possibility of a vaccination. And because I invest in some biomedical stocks, as far as I understand, there is progress on R&D on vaccination, and some of them are actually promising. So if this happens, of course, that will be great. Okay, although I understand that there is such a possibility that the vaccination does not really come into effective and the virus keep on mutating. So that's all possible, which is really the downside risk. But let's say if the good news is we have a vaccine which is reliable, effective early next year, which will be very timely because we are concerned on the second global wave early next year. It will be winter again early next year. And remember, temperature is the most important protective factor. So if there is no vaccination by early next year, we should be concerned on the second wave. But then on the other hand, if we do have a vaccination, this should, to a large extent, reduce a lot of uncertainty. And of course, these are good news for the economic recovery. Although I totally agree with Professor Quah, a lot of structural transformation should still continue going on.
Yeah, so hopefully we
let's see. I mean, one of the things we need to remember is there are 9 coronaviruses out there, and many of them have been around for 50, 60 years. How many vaccines do we have for coronaviruses, including sort of one of its cousins, HIV? Answer, 0. Viruses mutate all the time, and you only need one protein mutation in a string of 1 million. 1 out of 1 million can mutate, and then the antibody no longer recognizes the antigen. And so this is the problem. Viruses are very, very clever. And so, yes, I'm optimistic. I hope we get a vaccine. I hope I'm right. But we don't have a vaccine for hepatitis, and hepatitis is a huge killer. Chlamydia, dengue fever, HIV, many others, right? Where those have been around for dozens, dozens and dozens of years, and they kill tens of millions of people. There's no vaccine. And even the flu vaccine is only effective between 10 and 45% of people, right? And so 55% of people have no effect from the flu vaccine. So look, I'm an optimistic person. David knows that, but we need to be realistic as well and get on with life and move forward and be bold and be confident and say, you know what? Singapore is moving ahead. This is what we're going to do. Here's our plan. Get off the back foot and get out of the worry corner and step forward.
So Paul, maybe I can ask this question as a follow-up, the second and third question. You live in Hong Kong much longer time, right? Property prices is so much higher than Singapore, you know, and the wages are also higher than Singapore. So the second question is about wages and property prices. And also the third one is about, you know, how competitive it is. So from your experience globally, how would you address the second and third question in terms of competitiveness?
Well, you know, you know what, David, I think, you know, I've just been thinking about this in the last few days. I think we're going to have to start really like blowing up, just getting TNT and blowing up all of our ideas, because we're going to have to be really rethinking what we're going to do with property. What's going to become of a commercial office space? What can we do with high-end real estate that's empty because people left? How can we adjust real estate to accommodate a lower income? You know, there's going to have to be, we're really going to have to just blow the roof off. And even the developers, I think, are going to have to really rethink about this. China is moving ahead at flank speed in connected cities. And, you know, I just put out some research today on China Chain and the stuff that China Chain is doing to revolutionize cities and urban planning and smart cities is truly remarkable. Singapore needs to hook up with that and get moving. Singapore is a node in China Chain, right? Singapore needs to be friends with the US, but it also needs to be friends with China, which is doing some state-of-the-art technological change in how we understand cities and neighborhoods and residential buildings and urban planning and commercial office space. So we got to get on board with China here. What's going on with China Chain, we need to pay attention to that. That's the way out.
Yeah. Those of you who are not onto Dr. Paul Soti mailing list, today he set out on the blockchain-based service network, BSN, which is very interesting. I urge you to take a look. Professor Danny Quah, you have anything to add?
Oh, no, I think the way he said that is really well taken. I might expand a bit on something that Paul referred to in passing, which is that there might well be huge blocks of office buildings and what is now expensive real estate that will no longer be needed, because the way in which COVID-19 has made us change the way in which we work. We need to be prepared for that. There could be a coming crash in real estate prices, or put it another way, there could be a rationalization. In the long run, that might be a good thing because it would change patterns of income inequality. It would, you know, much of the reason why the inequality is so high is because the rental on scarce assets is so pushed by demand. But once the economy rationalizes the way in which we distribute people, workers, consumption across space in a way that's more respectful of distance, then all of these prices will need to change. Inequality could well fall, but we need to be watchful for a potential crash in what might now be very overinflated real estate prices.
Right, that's a very good point that Professor Danny Quah has raised, that we have printed really a lot of money, you know, so much so that I think the asset market is actually to me is all-time high, that we really got to watch it very closely. You know, Professor Wu, you have anything to add on to that?
Oh, maybe I can come back to one point about how to help the labor force during the structural transformation. Yeah, I have something to say because I work for NTU, and I can say something which is very relevant. In the past 1 year, okay, actually that's even before the COVID-19, we have been working very hard to help the labor force adjust to the digital economy. For example, we have set up a mini master program, and we have started this lifelong learning, and we are going to make internship compulsory at NTU. So these are all the efforts. The high education level has been help the labor force to transform. And if I can say something, okay, for the younger generation, I understand many of the audience are actually students. So for students, apparently we are going to do two things. One is to make the right choice for the sector or for the subjects you are learning. And the other is really to enhance the literacy. While the literacy today is different from the literacy 100 years ago. Literacy today means two things. One is financial literacy. Another is digital literacy, which I'm sure Professor David Lee, you know best. So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that comment about the education side, because we are all educators. The Economic Society, I think it's important to identify which area we go into, which is very, very difficult. So we really need to train them on the job and all. I think Dana has some more questions that you can pose, right? Are you going to have some more questions that we will pose? Okay, if no, okay. So I think we have run out of time, and I'll pass on to Danon in a couple of minutes. But I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion. There was like a no-hold discussion from COVID to our cost issue, our labor issue, our dormitories issue, and so on. But there are solutions. There's always the case that once the mindset is set to say that this is a problem, we can always solve the problem, because we are all human. If we become human-centric and focus on economic science being to improve the welfare of people, like what I think Professor Danny Quah, Professor Laura Wu, and also Dr. Paul Schulte is talking about, we must always focus on the kind of innovation that can do good. And I personally feel that we are at the era, at least in my lifetime, for the past 60 to since Second World War, that we can do good and do well at the same time, even for entrepreneurs. I think that is the biggest positive that I see. That is very important for us economists to continue to do evidence-based research in those areas to give the right public policy prescription, and have the humility to understand that the world is so uncertain with so many different viruses that we may not have a solution. But how do we deal with them? I think if there's only one sentence that I need to summarize for today's discussion, is that we need to be human-centric. We need to go back to the basic, to care about the human race, not only about your own country, but there is a multiplier effect all around the world, that we need to worry about. It is not just about your own nationality. There's mobility. There are many people in your country, many people in the region that we really need to take care. And I hope today's discussion will entice and stimulate the thinking that we can do more research in those areas. So thank you very much.